Well, howdy, partners. This is Wild M, and our final four have wrestled themselves into a whole heap of trouble. We have ourselves a good old-fashioned showdown, and I'll be here to guide you through it. Let's showcase these greenhorns in the losers bracket first, starting with the notorious Cherokee Bill Carlbunk. Replicator 1.0 is about taking a single input atom and producing two of it with the least reactors and least symbols possible. It's harder than it sounds unless you're one of these guys. I've thrown in a hydrogen, a nitrogen, and a meitnerium to start us off. As I read about how meitnerium was pronounced, I found out that it's typically made by fusing lead and cobalt or bismuth and iron. And to make up for my terrible pronunciation of it in the past, I'll also say that it was named after Lisa Meitner, the first woman to get a PhD. That's pretty impressive, and I probably also pronounced something wrong, so whatever. Okay, so this solution starts by preloading a hydrogen on both outputs, which is very slow, but that's fine. It's not important. So as soon as we notice that first hydrogen, we basically just immediately output these two. That means that this starting hydrogen is never actually used for our outputs, the output it was intended for. It actually is used as our preload for the next set, so that means that every single final hydrogen of an atom, we're never actually going to use it for our output. Kinda strange, but useful. Anyway, nitrogen is a bit different. How we're going to handle this is, we're just going to repeatedly split until we find a hydrogen, and then detect it, fuse in a hydrogen each, and just do that over and over until we get all the way down to that final hydrogen. So when we get there, same thing as before, we just output. So as you can see, nitrogen and nitrogen. Very nice. With meitnerium, it takes a pretty long time. I mean, you have to pull a hydrogen from your starting atom 109 times, and because of that, we're not going to watch this finish. After all, we've seen the 53 symbols, and this solution would go forever anyway, right? I guess I also want to state that I thought that the leaving behind the extra hydrogen was a really clever move, because a lot of players are going to think, they want to use the entire atom to make one of the two duplicates, but this one doesn't. So anyway, Cannonball 9 was regrettably unable to make the solution crash, and I couldn't either, so let's see how he did. Oh. Huh. Well, he didn't actually manage to submit anything. Here's his sorry excuse. It's, I failed. Imagine a screen entirely filled with sensors in a matting spiral. I almost had it in one, then changed tack entirely until the compromise is built up and I'm out of time. Apologies to Carlbunk for my being awful. I look forward to people making it look easy. It still feels like such a simple puzzle. I'd also like to state that Guava Moment apologizes for, I guess, making things worse for Cannonball 9. Apparently he asked for him for some advice. So yeah. Instead, let's look at the best Replicator 1.0 solution that I received. It's not actually Carlbunk's. Tough Thought has cemented himself as the champion of better solutions by submission time alone. This is another 53 symbol one, turned in a full 5 days in advance. I really wanted to say that the start arrow here wasn't needed, but it actually is. Anyway, starting with the seed hydrogen, split until we find a hydrogen, fuse that into your storage ball, add a single hydrogen to our seed atom, then repeat until we're about to try and split a hydrogen. And if we start with the hydrogen, we're going to do a little special handling, where we drop here, and then blue goes this way. Alright, so right here, normally what would happen is blue is about to try and fuse right here. Now, if there was something right here, the fuse would be totally fine, I think. Maybe, yes, we would have picked something up here and then fused. Anyway, since that didn't happen, red just fixes it for him. So, takes care of that. And that's really it for this one. I mean, once we get to nitrogen, we're gonna watch it split again. So yeah, that's the whole thing. Nice job, that's pretty impressive. Oh wait, the solution doesn't actually work if you place a hydrogen later on in the solution. I'm really surprised Tough Thought didn't try this out, but what can you do? Just to show off though, here's how you fix it. All you have to do is move that here, and it'll do it just fine. The issue that happened, if you saw it earlier, was red dropped here while blue was over here. So blue picked up that starting hydrogen, then dropped it here, and then that was it. The solution was ended and you couldn't do anything. So as long as you move this arrow this way, blue spends a little extra time trying to travel this way. Naturally it makes the solution slower, but what can you do? Anyway, that just goes to show you that this isn't hard to make, or this isn't as easy to make foolproof as you would think. So again, very nice job, Carbunk. You earned this. Up next is Replicator 1.1 and Serval-Drig's incredibly complicated solution. In Replicator 1.1, you do the same thing as Replicator 1.0, except we're going to also be working with the diatomic molecules along with, single atoms. This explodes the complexity, and so does the fact that we're now trying to do this as fast as possible. Oh, and this solution actually has 529 symbols, but I couldn't find one. It's somewhere in here. He had a really good, terrible symbol. Right, so let's start with these three reactors at the top. So this one's going to take our two carbon molecules and split them based on whether the carbon molecule contains a hydrogen or a nitrogen. Next, this one and the next one are just brilliant. I like them a lot. What's going to happen is these are basically going to form a two-way splitter for hydrogens. How this works is if the blue Waldo backs up, the red Waldo just outputs the top and drops and keeps doing the same thing over and over. In this reactor it's the same deal, except this goes to a recycler, meaning that as long as this reactor here backs up at least a few times, then you're good. Of course, naturally though, you want these to both back up. If one of them didn't back up, you'd probably have problems. So anyway, let's also go to this one at the bottom. What this does is takes phosphorus and breaks it down to its natural helium state. Alright, let's check out the meat and bones. Alright, so we're gonna pop a sensor somewhere here, I think. So let's put it... I don't remember where. Let's just watch it run. So if we have a hydrogen, what we're going to do is output a straight string of nitrogens. Same thing with a helium and a xenon and a meitnerium. So with a hydrogen chloride hydrochloric acid, there we are. If we have a hydrochloric acid, what's going to happen is we're going to immediately break the bond, and then we're going to move this stick over 3 times. So we fuse everything in, we have a nickel. If we do that with a sulfur monoxide, which has 2 bonds, we're going to spend 1 time breaking it down, the second time breaks it apart, only scoots over twice, we fuse to scandium. With 3 times, same sort of deal, except we just move it over once, which means we fuse to silicon. So this is basically just a bond counter. I mean, it's a lot better than the one I did. I like it. This next reactor is where we're going to split. Let's start from the beginning, actually. What this does is splits whatever we have here into up to 4 pieces. Now, you're going to think here, but what about hydrogen through lithium, which can't split into 4 pieces? Well, that's why we have this top output here. How this works is hydrogen will give out a hydrogen, the helium will give out to helium, lithium gives out lithium. So basically what these stand for at the top is 1 atom, 2 atoms, 3 atoms, 4 atoms, 4 atoms. So beryllium stands for anything from beryllium all the way to meitnerium. Alright, makes sense to me. This reactor is very simple. All it does is interleave our unknown inputs here with a single hydrogen. Okay, this is where it gets weird. See, you don't even know what's going on. But let's add something in here so I can at least not take forever having inputs come in. Okay, so how this works is the objective of this reactor is basically to take in any small atom and produce 2 copies of it, fusing them together, and then splitting them, then outputting them. It can only handle up to cobalt, which is why we did that splitting earlier. So if our input is an odd number, like a hydrogen, we'll add a C to hydrogen on to our main input, and then we'll just fuse those two together, then do that split thing that I mentioned earlier. Now, you'll also see that on the aluminum here. Alright, so for the aluminum, we repeatedly split our input and fuse heliums until we get to magnesium, and then we add on that spare hydrogen. So, you know, it makes sense, just as complicated. So with silicon, it's almost the same thing. We're just going to fuse until we get to silicon and then skip the hydrogen step. And what's going to happen is blue is going to dispose of this hydrogen for us. So there we are, 2 silicons. Hopefully this sensor business makes sense from just watching it run. Yeah, the idea is we're just going to stop doing input fuses once we reach the proper size, and we add on the bonus hydrogen if necessary. Alright, so removing this and pushing this back to where it's supposed to be, let's check out our next reactor. Skipped ahead. So I need a pause here as well, which I believe is going to go right here. Sweet. Okay, so this reactor is going to determine how many atoms we need to fuse together to get our target, but only for one of the duplicate atoms. Blue's going to take the other parts of our duplicate atoms in pieces up top, and then red's going to pass the fuse counter with it. So, as you can see, that was a hydrogen and hydrogen, then we passed the fuse counter with helium. We're going to pass 2 hydrogens on the bottom, and kind of similar here. You know, let's add in another pause right here so we can see it a little bit better. That's a split. So, hydrogen, hydrogen, and then that's the whole thing. Helium, hydrogen, and one more hydrogen. Sweet. So, for, what was the next one? There we are, aluminum. That's going to be 4 pieces, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Sweet. And same one, so on and so forth. Alright, let's take that off and check out the next reactor. We're going to follow along with this part. Alright, so this one is where we're going to start preparing our bond sticks again. Strings of nitrogen are pretty boring, so let's pop on that pause command again and skip past them all. So with the nitrogen, you know, obviously we just output, we're done. Same with this one and this one. Xenon, Meitnerium. Okay, so now we have a nickel. How this works is, so nickel's going to basically stand for a single bond, and I believe this one's going to be, what's this? Here we are, scandium for a double bond, so we're about to pull in a sulfur. I should have put a pause right here, but that's okay. I mean, I'm assuming there's music making this a little more exciting. Alright, sulfur, and I almost want to skip past the next one because it's going to take a while, as we saw a second ago. This one's boron nitride, so... wow. Oh, there we are. You know what? Close enough. So anyway, once we finish that, we pass our bond counter onwards to this final reactor, which I'm going to show off as soon as I get rid of this pause command. Whew, okay, final reactor. What this does is it fuses unknown atoms together until we detect our fusion atom in the top left corner. That can be hydrogen, helium, lithium, or beryllium. If it is a single atom, and if we're going to get a string of nitrogens here, we just skip everything, output. Same with helium, same with xenon, same with meitnerium. Now, this is where it gets interesting. We're going to input something that is not a stick of nitrogens. We're just going to repeat the process again. Oh, and that was a hydrogen. We just output our hydrochloric acid. So for this one, sulfur dioxide, we have a scandium and nitrogen. So we're about to time this well enough that we detect a scandium right here, do a double bond, and we're done. Whew. So that's the whole thing. We're done. So this is going to take us a lot of cycles. So let's talk about what the problem with this is. This is our bottleneck, and as you can see clearly, it backs up. Everything else after that's fine. Comparing this to my solution, which broke everything down to hydrogens and then put it back together, mine was about 7,500 cycles. This one is close to that, which isn't a good sign, especially since he had an otherwise clever idea. Oh, almost there. Hopefully I don't pass it. Here we are. So our final one is going to be a xenon, so hopefully I don't miss it. That's not a xenon. Oh, there it is actually. Well, look at that. So here is our nitrogen telling us we're done. And here is our final xenon for 6,230 cycles. And that was 10 minutes of explanation. So let's see how long it's going to take us to hear the explanation of Echo 2 solution. This solution uses one more reactor than several Driggs. It also uses this. Oh, this. Before diving right in, I'm going to also point out that I never actually said that output printers were forbidden, just pass-through printers and unlimited storage tanks. So what Echo 2 decided to do was use additional output printers as recyclers. I'm glad he did that because that was what I expected to happen. Anyway, so right here, Echo 2 didn't name this anything, but I'm going to call it Echo 2's reagent just because it makes sense. So what we're going to do is split this in half and come back to it later. Alright, so this reactor sometimes splits diatomic molecules if they're available, and it also splits this uranium stick. So let's just watch that a few times. Even fast it makes sense. It's very straightforward. Alright, so this second reactor is a thing of beauty. This is going to leave hanging uranium bonded onto the right side for a single atom. However, that's not the whole story. Watch this. With multiple ones, that happens. So we just scoot it over by 1, and by 2, and then by 3. Okay, so how in the hell did that just happen? Well, let's check it out. Alright, so doing this again, hydrogen, helium, xenon, and technetium. Alright, so what happens here? This first reactor is going to try to debond an output 3 times in a row. For molecules, that means that the upper atom will be output at different times depending on the bond count, which desyncs the next reactor. So let's watch that for all 3 of these again. Okay. Whew. So doing this all again, same deal. Just move it over. And if you think this is impressive, man, we're not even done yet. We'll get back to this uranium stick a bit later. Alright. Ooh, I have pages of notes on this, and I ran out of space. Alright. So, Echo 2's solution depends on the fact that you cannot fuse an atom past technetium. What he's going to do is attempt to fuse in palladium, germanium, sulfur, and oxygen, in that order. If any of those fail to fuse in, it means that the atom is necessary to make your duplicates. I'm going to repeat that again since it's essential to understanding how this puzzle works. If you cannot fuse any of Echo 2's atoms from this reagent into the target atom, then it means that you need that atom to make your duplicate. So, since we have a xenon here, that means that we've already accounted for a germanium and a sulfur, which combines to 48 protons out of xenon's 54, so we're mostly almost done. Let's follow our key. Okay, so our key is going this way. Okay, this is going to, well, this was the one for the previous one. Alright, so what this does is, it throws any single atoms into the recycler. Double atoms are going to be used for our duplicates. Right, so this key is going into our final reactor, so let's backtrack to our original atom and the oxygen that got passed along with it. So, starting over again, I think that was, here we are. So, potassium, oxygen. Alright. If you remember from Echo 2's key, which we just saw a second ago, you need 2 of each atom that you're going to fuse into duplicates. So this is testing for beryllium. So what we're going to do is try and fuse in. Alright, so that failed, we need the beryllium. Let's follow that hassium again. This is what Echo 2 calls his 1, 2, 3 reactor. It's testing to see if we need hydrogen, helium, or lithium. Remember that we need 2 of whichever we need, so we're just, outputting double that. Since hydrogen and helium are hard to use in a key state due to volume limitations, Echo 2 cheats a little and uses a sensor to determine which is needed. You will only ever need one of these 3. So basically, each set of 4 atoms, hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, and then the next group, which I can't even remember right now. Anyway, each set of 4 will be treated the same way up to this point. From here, though, we'll have fused up to borium, hassium, meitnerium, or seaborgium. Meitnerium, sorry. Someone gave me a hard time about pronouncing that wrong, so I'm trying to get it right from now on. And I probably pronounced seaborgium wrong because I forgot to look it up. Anyway, we have a hassium, so that's going to mean 2 heliums, which is a beryllium. Note that if we didn't have any of these 3 atoms, we'd pass an element delta forward. That happens from this seaborgium sensor right here. Okay, back to our xenon. Well, I said our xenon. Yes, so here we are. We need to skip forward to... oh, I think that was our xenon. Whoops. Ha. See, this is... I'm going to go ahead and say this is a really fast solution without saying the rest. So that was our hydrogen, helium, xenon. Okay, so what this is doing, it takes the oxygen that we filled to fuse into hassium, or the 2 berylliums, and then the beryllium from the 1, 2, 3 reactor, and it's going to fuse to magnesium. Cool. So if we didn't need a beryllium in our final product, we would just see a single beryllium up here, and we'd sense it and discard it. If we didn't need a hydrogen, helium, or lithium, we'd see an element delta here on the bottom. That'll get discarded since it, it failed to fuse into anything. Well, usually. It was at this point that I wondered what would happen if we saw both a beryllium at the top and a delta at the bottom, since both of those normally get discarded. It sounds like bad things would happen if we missed outputting something here, right? However, Echo 2, completely accounted for that due to this beryllium sensor here. Oh, wow. See, I just did that on accident. I didn't plan on that happening in the video. I was going to have to make an overlay. Anyway, with delta, that's what happens. You just output it. So everything's accounted for. This part, at least, won't crash. Okay, so this is going to be our duplicated atom sensor, or atom splitter. What we do is split everything in half and then push the results into either output. So, in this case here, hydrogen, helium, xenon. Sweet. So, xenon at the top, and that was a carbon, along with a germanium and sulfur at the bottom. So that would make 54. Just like before, we need to think about what would happen if we had an element delta in the bottom. And apparently we can just skip ahead to that in a second. At least I thought we did. Let's see. Where are we at? There it was. You see that? Alright, so with that element delta, it got dropped early. And if we had several things, what it would do is debond here, and then bond everything in a line, and still just handle everything perfectly. I'll probably have an overlay for this part. Whew. So anyway, let's follow that first xenon we had from earlier, and make it again. So, that was one. Huh, this is supposed to be going a lot faster. Hydrogen, helium, and xenon. Alright. So what this does is it's just using the bond counter to assemble the atoms or molecules. The uranium stick is going to redirect this blue Waldo for purposes of bonding, and the red Waldo gets redirected for early disposal of the item. I'll, I guess, let the actions speak for themselves here instead of describing each one as it goes along. And I think we've seen everything now. Hold up, one more. Well, there we go. Let's go back to our second xenon, which I lost. Where did it go? Here we are. Second xenon, I think. Oh. You know, this is a maze, man. Sometimes it's just sweet. So, our second xenon. So, here we're going to go with a hydrogen first. Hydrogen, helium, and xenon. Cool. So if we were making a germanium instead, we'd have that hanging delta, which would be taken care of, and then we'd fail to use anything up top, which would mean that we'd have to debond, carry the germanium to the proper output region, and then output it. Well, we've made it, guys. This is our final reactor. This is actually a lot like the bond sensor or bond reassembly circuit from the last time. So, you know, right-hand uranium means 1. Well, it means 0 bonds, I guess, technically. Then 1 bond, 2 bonds, 3 bonds. Whew. You know, I'll let us watch it one more time. Oh, how did you do this, man? This is crazy. So to finalize this, our final time is going to be... I really don't want to skip it. Okay, well here we go, guys. It's a little scary. That was just 705 cycles. You know, I had no idea it was possible to get anywhere near that close at all, or anywhere that low. I mean, Echo 2's just blown Serble Drag me and everyone else just completely out of the water. It's crazy. So it's my pleasure to crown Echo 2 as the champion of SpaceChem Tournament 2013. You've taken everything that I've thrown at you and just made it look easy. So thanks, guy. I'd also like to personally thank Serble Drag, Carlbunk, and Cannonball9 for all the very impressive things they've let me show off these past few months, as well as everyone else who's taken the time to participate. That includes a large list, so give me just one moment. Okay, we're good to go. So that includes AB796C65, Alkidir, Alpha Raptor, Amphigarist, Ants280, Black Wombat, Blue Edge Rat, Carbon Dioxide, Cairn, Color Printer, Content Context, CSUCW, that's really hard to get right, Darius Raider, The Sorcerer, Dire Spoon, Ethful, Fentanizer, Forer, Fuel Cell, Gauntlet Wizard, Gigi Gall, Goggle Fox, Squav Moment, Guilty Bystander, Guy Axelrod, Hair Doctor, J Warrior, James Bob, Genderbuilt, Job Jesus, Jethro Q Walrus Today, Crackor, Lardnar, The Wallace Me, Lector, Leveling, Laylite, Little Big Dash, Measure JF, McCrush, Meatbag Esquire, Mjal, Leaker, Moreholt, Mr. Blarney, Nako Nako Ni, who I hope I said their name at one point earlier, Netherus, 19 Hand, Oakunus, Ozhaka, Osgrim, PC Gabriel, Hegus, Phantom L994, Poochie EXE, Brenton, Pseudodude, RFA31, Rune Spism, Ruby Bill SPC, Sekhmet Sarah Riddler, Sibling of TB, Sarahwit, Sphinocene, Stout, Tedward, The Knife, The Void, Toby Say 99, Tough Thought, Tolman, Ubersolmatic, Valley, Viking Helmet, Virtual 256, Flat Antlerkopf, Waypoint, XXLAXX, XYZYXX, Johan, and Zindy Minner. I'd also like to thank the others who have participated indirectly through emailed solutions or interesting discussions. That includes Tulip, Fane, who I've said earlier and may be pronouncing wrong, JFB1000, and probably others who I've forgotten, and I apologize for that. Special thanks to Zach Barth of Zachtronics, who is sponsoring a good portion of the prizes. I really appreciate it very much, and I'm sure everyone else is going to appreciate it too. Most importantly, I'd like to thank you guys, the viewers. It's been a pleasure going through these solutions with you. Thanks for sitting along with me and showing an interest in one of my favorite puzzle games. But who would I be if I didn't show off my own solution? So this is basically what I tried to set up whenever I was just concerned about getting it to work at all. You know, I wasn't even sure that it was possible to do this. So, you know, naturally I wasn't aiming for top speed or anything. But anyway, I guess my point I want to make here is that SpaceChem is definitely one of my favorite puzzle games. Just it gives you an opportunity to give a problem to yourself that's not about work, it's not about something you're getting paid for, it's just an enjoyable problem you get to solve, something that someone else may have already solved and you want to outdo them, or something you just make up for yourself. Being able to make up Replicator and then figure it out was such a satisfying issue to me. I loved the ability to come up with my own problems, make my own project, and finish it. So what else do we have to show off here? You know, let's not talk about the puzzle here so much. Anyway, I really hope you guys had an opportunity to, if you're new to the game, I guess have an interest in it, or just the idea of being able to solve things. This is kind of hard to convey, but you know, it's funny actually. I was originally planning for this portion. I had written up everything that Guava said at the end of last year, and because at the end he has this joke where he's like, you know what I call these instances where I figure something out? To call them Guava moments, and it's, you know, it's really funny, whatever. I was gonna do the same thing verbatim, and then at the end say not Guava moment, and it was gonna be hilarious, but I didn't, because, you know, it's lame. But anyway, I just, thanks again everybody, I really appreciate it, and, you know, we'll see what happens next. Have a good one.